All right, we're back with another episode of the Pencil King Show, and today we are joined with another student inside the Evolve program. And like I've been saying, I am a student as well, so we're kind of all in this together. And I want to give the listeners of Pencil Kings a chance to peek inside and see what looks like, as well as for the people who are inside Evolve to put faces to some of the names that they see inside the private study group and just have a better sense of who we all are. So to start off, could you give us your name and where you're from?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kristen, and I'm right now I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. So, in the US, I guess, in case anybody is confused about where Massachusetts is.
One of the few, well, not few cities, but one of the cities that's on the list of places to get to, and I'm really looking forward to eventually having a Boston meetup because I know there's quite a few people who are in that area. Um,
Yeah, that'd be awesome. One of the homework people, right, is going to school up here.
yeah, yeah, and there'll just be more and more people as time goes on. I feel like there's something happening, especially in the northeast of the states, that I've noticed with Pencil Kings and with Evolve too. I don't know if we're just more artsy in the Northeast or what it is. But when I start to look at the who's from where, because sometimes you can tell by people's IP addresses or whatever, and you just look at these groups of people and you're like, wow, there's a real concentration here, especially like in Pennsylvania as well. But let's get back on track here. So, when did you start with the Evolve program?
I joined at the end of May, so I think I got my box probably in June.
Okay, so we're now just at the beginning of December, so we're looking at what, six, or is it only 5 months?
June, July, August, September, October, November. Yeah, 6 months.
Six
This
months.
is the start of the seventh month.
Okay, perfect. And had you done any art study before?
Not really. Um, I kind of had it as a hobby when I was a kid, and it was mostly just kind of self-directed. And so I was doing that for a long time, and I just realized that if I wanted to get better at the kind of art that I was doing at the time, that I really needed to study foundations and especially 2D foundations. So I started doing that in March, I think, just for like, yeah, March 1st or like February 28th. I joined Pencil Kings and I started going through those courses. Um,
That's really, yeah, I just want to stop there for a second and ask a follow-up question because
yeah.
what did you, what were you drawing when you were a kid that was interesting to you? Because for me, it was like comic book superheroes, but I
Uh-huh.
only ever drew them in like this standing up straight on pose because I had that How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book,
Uh-huh.
and it was like, oh, sweet, I'm gonna draw Captain America and the thing, and the most I could get was tracing them. And then as soon as it got to like draw the body in proportion or in perspective or start using these I just couldn't make sense of like I could see on the page, but there was like this
Hmm.
brick wall in front of my brain and my hand and everything being able to do it myself. But for you when you were a kid, what kind of stuff were you making?
Um, oh gosh, I was interested in making everything. I think that the main thing that I was doing was I was making dolls and I was doing paintings, like not like um, still life setups or anything, but like we lived by like a pond with some ducks. So one of the things that I had painted in probably now terribly aged watercolor was like the ducks on the lake and like a sunset. Um, but primarily like I made dolls because that was I think the most inclusive um, I think I don't know, craft, I guess, because it definitely wasn't art at the level I was doing it then, but craft that I could find because you kind of draw like a schematic, like a proportional schematic, and you're doing figurative sculpture, and then there's sewing, and then if there are props, then you're making those in miniature too. So it's the closest thing I found to just kind of involving everything, and I really like the holistic approach there. It lets me kind of shove all of my interests into one basket.
That makes sense. And mm, thinking back for myself as well, did you feel that drawing and painting gave you sort of like you wanted to do it, but you didn't know how, so you weren't as inclined, but because you were seeing some, we'll just call it air quotes here, success with doll
Uh,
making, that it's like, oh, I like this because it makes me feel good, whereas the drawing, I'm just like, I
yeah.
don't like this.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I had, I went to school for architecture, and the instructors I had were just like, "Oh, you can't draw," and that's kind of just like the end of the discussion. Like it wasn't even like
What were
try
you
these books or take these courses. They're just like,
what were you drawing that they were, do you remember like the exercise were just like, I don't know,
it.
maybe you can't draw.
Well, you have to. So for our studio classes, you're doing design, so you're drawing, just like a plan, a floor plan, which doesn't really require any artistic skill. That's just like, manipulating a ruler and a T-square. Um, but then after you design the floor plan, you're doing elevations and so the outside, and you're doing like sections, and you're trying to convey like what it would feel like to inhabit that space.
Hmm.
And if you're doing renderings, then that usually involves, texture and color and like a street scene. Because at that point, then you're basically trying to sell somebody on your design.
But are those like the 3D kind of perspective things, or are they still like a flat
They're
side
still
view?
flat, but they're
Wow. And
uh,
so at that point, that those kind of exercises are like you can't draw.
pretty much, yeah. Like one of the things that I had a review, I think it was my junior year, and we were supposed to be designing this kind of study pod. And so I had the design, and it was funny. The professor really liked the design of the pod. He's like, I really like how, you kind of go into this space, and the space unfolds, and I feel like it would be a really nice place to inhabit. And he just looks at the drawing, and he's just like, or the section. Um, and he's like, in the hands of somebody who could really draw, that would be a holy smoke section. And I was like, okay. And he's like, but don't worry about it. He's like you don't have like you can't draw, but you don't have to draw. And that was just kind of the end of the discussion. I was just like, okay, can't draw. That's
Right. And so now, I mean, if you're listening, you won't be able to see it, but you can see these paintings that Kristen has behind, which all this
uh,
stuff starts with drawing. We'll get to that later, but you can just see behind her that, and I guess my point here is that if anyone's listening and has had this experience where someone says, you don't know how to draw, uh, don't let that voice
no,
in your mind, because there's there have been a few people that I've met where that statement becomes so powerful in the student's mind that they almost can never get over it for their entire life. They believe the instructor. And if you're listening to this and you're an instructor, please do not ever tell someone that they cannot draw, because it's it's more likely your fault as the instructor that they can't draw, that you maybe just don't have the right resources to give the student for them to have a breakthrough in the right way. And so it's maybe not your fault that your instructor didn't give you the right methods to teach. And art is not an easy thing to teach. But please don't tell people that they can't draw, because time and
no.
time again, I have taught people to draw, and we've gotten so many people over this, but it can be a big hurdle, and maybe even an impossible hurdle to get over for some people.
Yeah, it took me I think like 10 years I think to get over it, and I don't think I would have gotten over it at all, except I live with another artist, and I would do these sketches kind of as studies and plans for projects and dolls, and they'd be like, "Well, that's a good drawing," and I'm like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yeah," and so it was really like it took years of like, okay, well maybe this doesn't suck for me to even be like, okay, maybe I could do 2D art, but yeah, so I mean, I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, but there's like, right, this painting I did yesterday. of a rose for the color block, but like here's the sketch. I mean, and obviously it's a drawing, and obviously it's fine, but um, yeah, I just never would have to have gone from like 10 years thinking like, nope, I can't draw. I'm not even gonna try. And
And I think too, like for where you're at now, you could go back to those old assignments and be like, easily draw them because you're doing things that are 10 or 100 times more complex. And it's like, you could almost go back to the teacher and be like, hey, here's this. The instructor probably doesn't care. Everyone moves on with their lives, and we get
right,
stuck in these moments, and everyone else is moving forward. But it's like, look, you told me I couldn't draw. I did this. Why didn't you just tell me this? Or why didn't you show me this? Because there's a few. I don't think drawing is hard. Often it's like you need the right teacher to give you a few
yeah,
pieces of knowledge, and it's only a few pieces. Someone gave me a book on proportions for the face, and I used to draw these like really long, really pointy chin. And this is even before watching anime and that kind of stuff. It naturally was like somebody just stretched them like silly putty, and she was like, "Okay, I know you think you're pretty good. You're not. Here's a book, though. Here's the specific sections in the book that I want you to read and learn and do these exercises." I did that. Everything fell together in literally like a weekend. I wasn't a master at that point, but
uh-huh,
it gave me that, 3 pages of information that was like, now I can draw faces and they look pretty good. And it's as simple as that a lot of times.
yeah. It was just it was really encouraging. I just had like this revelation, like, oh, it's not talent, it's work. And work was fine. Work was entirely within my control. Like, oh, like I can work.
Mm.
I can do tons of work. That's fine. But talent just seems so mysterious. But talent, and if you're right, just changing talent to skill and thinking like for skill, you just need work. Like, oh, yeah, it changed everything.
That's such a great way to look at it. And I used to think it was fun, but it's not. Like, it can be fun and it can be
Yeah,
meditative, but it is actually work. Like, you have to be intentional about it as an adult. That as an adult, I'm not sure how many things are actually fun. I feel like I enjoy things, but the fun, like the pure joy, it's more
yeah.
difficult as an adult. We've just done too many things. We've normalized a lot of
It's
things.
rewarding. I don't know if I would, it's not always fun, but it's definitely rewarding.
Yeah, I can see that definitely. With the stories that are coming out of the program, the students when they're starting to show their work and people are already starting to want to hire students. I'm like, I'm barely even started. I'm just crawling right now with my art. Like, but I know where I'm headed, and I know that I'm
Yeah.
going to get to a place. And to me, this is kind of nuts because I haven't heard of any other program. And I'm sure there are some, but in my experience, I haven't heard of other programs where the students are just getting started. They're still putting in a lot of work, and other people are like, "Oh, can you make this? Can you make that?" And it's like, probably. Like, give me a little bit more time though, because I got to stay focused on my work. Um,
Yeah.
which brings me to the next question: is so why are you doing this? Like, What pushed you over the edge to start with Evolve?
Um, so January of this year, actually, it seems so long ago, we were at a local convention and we were looking at their art show. And I was just like, oh, this is fun. I want to do this next year. So I just kind of started thinking about like what kind of project I could like submit that would fit into the framework or the focus of the convention. And so I kind of realized a couple things, and one was that I would have to work like faster um, to get the pieces ready in time. But also, I was just having trouble because I was going to do 3D pieces because at that point I was still avoiding 2D work because I was
Oh,
like, oh,
wow.
I can't do it. Um,
Okay, so
so
you haven't even been doing 2D work for a full year yet.
No, I
Wow.
literally decided to study 2D like
Okay.
March.
I did not know that. Wow. Okay.
So and I couldn't, I was having trouble like even conceptualizing the 3D pieces because I didn't have kind of like this skill set to think about three-dimensional forms really um, in a visual way. So it was taking me a long time just to develop the concepts. Um, and I was like, okay, well, I'll try to do it digitally. Um, so I went from avoiding 2D to thinking like, oh, maybe more equipment will fix the problem, which I think is a classic newbie mistake. Like, oh, I just need better equipment.
New
No,
markers. I heard Copics will solve everything.
right?
They won't.
So I signed up for like, I was looking at the Gnomon workshop and I was looking at their ZBrush course, and I was watching the sculptor, like the instructor, and she was just flying, and I was just like, oh, shoot. I was like, ah. So, and I was watching and I realized, like, this program will not help me produce better sculptures. It might help me produce the same quality of sculptures faster, but that's not what I want. I want to improve. So I really need to stop avoiding fundamentals and start studying them. And that's kind of what I think of as like my turning pro moment. It's just like I gotta stop avoiding it and actually just lean into it and do it. Um, and so yeah, that was kind of the impetus for all of this. And I was going through Pencil Kings courses, and I was doing drawbox.com, and I was working because I just had like I need to get to like a decent standard of work, and I have like a year maybe or less than a year at that point. Um, so, and I was working like all day because I like to get up early before everyone else does whenever I can. So I usually try to get up like around 4 before everybody else wakes up, and so I'd start working then, and I would just keep working. So I was working like I'd say at least 8 hours a day, sometimes as many
Wow.
as like 13. But because it was self-directed and I was still trying to figure out like what it was I didn't know, and I just kept going back and back and back and finding all of these things that I can do. Like, oh,
Okay, so yeah, I want to explore this for a second here because I think what you're doing is a such an effective strategy that I see a lot of people not doing this. So it might seem intuitive for you, but I just want to. So it's like you want to draw something like. Do you have an example of something that you wanted to draw that you couldn't? Like in my mind, I'm thinking if I want to draw a car, there's certain
oh,
things that I would need to draw the car that you don't just sit down and draw a car. If you do, it's not going to be happy with it. Was there something that you remember specifically?
yeah, there were a couple pieces that I couldn't really take very far. Like I had one that was like a it was supposed to be kind of like this mer person, I guess, and like this fisherman who got tangled in his own net, and kind of at sea.
Wow, start easy, right?
um, I'm really not good at starting easy. I always just kind of like just jump in at the highest level that I'm pretty sure won't kill me, because I feel like that's when you just learn the most because you have to.
Mhm.
Um, so so yeah, I was, and the figure drawing was coming along because I had some practice with thinking about the figure from all the doll making. And the perspective was okay, but like values were terrible. I didn't know what values were. And I think that was like April. So I still didn't know what values were, which is probably not surprising after, 6 weeks. um, and I had no idea like how to color it. So I was like, all right, well, I need to study like values, and so I was doing the values challenge and looking at courses, and it was just like just basic things like, oh, all right, your painting has or your picture has light and it has dark. Like, oh, okay, that seems like it should be obvious, but I needed somebody to tell me something like
Yeah.
just that obvious.
Well,
There's a light
even
and a dark. Like, oh.
yeah, and I think even for me, like even having had a a professional career here, there's so much to know with art that there's tons of stuff that I didn't know. But for what I was doing, a lot of it was photograph based. So it just like values came for free. Does it look like the
Right.
photo? Was it a good photo? It's like as long as it looked like the photo, we were good for the most part. And um, but I like this idea of going back. See, it's like values, it's like how dark and light things are, and then so that's just black and white, really. Which
Yeah.
even the idea to break an image apart in your mind and be like, well, I want a finished color image, but it's going to help me to break it up into black and white first. But then you have the color component, so then you just keep going back and back until
Yeah.
eventually you're like, well, now I need to learn about fish anatomy because maybe I want certain fish parts, and so you're learning that, and you need more reference, and then it keeps going back, and then, well, okay, well, ropes. How does if it's tangled in a net, how does the person in a net
Uh, yeah,
tangled
I
look?
just
And it's
yeah, so some of that I was able
it's
to find
difficult.
reference pictures for, yeah, but then I was like trying to study values and shading and just like I was working digitally um because that was the cheapest way I could find to like work, especially at the level that I was doing work. So I bought like a cheap $50 tablet and I was using Autodesk Sketchbook because it was free and I was just going. Um, but like I couldn't get like the work to look like I wanted it to get to. Like it just looked very like flat because I didn't have this skill because so much of digital painting is really like, okay, you take traditional painting and then you just do the same thing digitally, but I didn't have the traditional painting background, so I was like, okay. So it's just like that was another thing. I was just like, I don't know what the texture is supposed to be. I don't know even what I'm trying to imitate. And so finally I was just like, I need someone to show me how to hold the pencil. I like
Wow.
and
So
so
you kept going back and back and back until it was like, how do I hold this thing?
right, like this is the most basic
Yeah.
bottom level problem I could find, how to hold the pencil. So when I was, and I kept hearing about Evolve, like some people would mention it in Pencil Kings, and I think there was somebody in the Discord, the PK Discord, who was doing that. And I was just like, all right, what is this? I signed up for the mailing list, and I was getting the the emails introducing the program and the results, and I was like, do they teach you how to hold the pencil, right? And Kevin was like, we even teach you how to hold the pencil, and I'm just like, done, I'm good, just shut
Okay.
up and take my money already.
Okay. Wow.
Like, stop talking so I can throw money at you.
Interesting. I never considered like going back that far and that being like the starting point that someone might be looking for. Of just like, hey man, I went down the rabbit hole, and there's a lot of different holes. It's like this tunnel maze that eventually it turns into. So I need to start at the beginning of that maze, and I need somebody to kind of take me by the hand and guide me through.
Yeah, I had all these high level concepts, but I had no fundamentals. So it's like my brain was working here, and my hands were just like, we're here.
But I think that's another thing that I'm curious of your thoughts on is that there's a lot of advice that says you learn the fundamentals, but I feel like in Evolve, we like throw all those out the window, and that's not to say that they're not valid. It's just like it's not the right time for them. And so it's kind of like once you don't have to worry about now these 12 fundamentals or whatever it is. But there's more than five, I would say, by anyone's list. There's more than five, and I've seen lists up to 12. But if you throw those away and just be like, okay, you just have to do this one thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, there's fundamentals. We'll get to that, but what you're actually learning is the fundamentals. And so, what is your thought? Because you'd mentioned Pencil Kings. We go into a lot of these different fundamental things. Draw a
Uh-huh.
box, which I believe is just drawing.
Yeah.
They go into fundamentals as well there, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Naman, you mentioned, which is another, like, if you haven't heard of it, it's a higher level school that if you want to break into entertainment industry, it's a great place to go to. But as a beginner, can be kind of daunting and kind of rough because you don't have that base
Yeah.
level. So now your experience going through Evolve, how is it different? Because I feel like this is one of the things that appealed to me. It was just like it threw everything away.
Yeah, it started very simply, but I liked um, that the program had an end goal. Like you start here with how you hold your pencil, and by the end of the program, this is what students are painting. So I knew from the get, like, all right, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to get this result, and this is how long it's going to take if I commit to like the bare minimum, which I didn't do because I can't do that.
But you're going to
So I
finish faster as well, right?
yeah, yeah, but I knew going in, like, all right, if I put in the work, and I'm gonna put in the work because I'm already putting in the work, like, I'm gonna end up here, which you don't have when you're self-taught. You're just like, oh God, am I gonna get it fast enough? Like, where will I end up? Will I be good enough by the time, like, but, so with the program, I was just like, it was very clear, like, we're gonna start here, we're gonna do this, and by the end of it, this is where we'll be. This is where everybody is. So it just took a lot of that anxiety just off. I'm
Mm.
just like, where am I going to be at the end of this? Like, no, I know.
I
um,
love one of the things that you said earlier that it's like it's just work. Work I can do. Talent or some kind of magical powers,
yeah,
maybe not, but work. If you're telling me I just have to sit, put my butt in the chair and follow the
yeah,
directions and ask for help when I need it, that you'll guide me. It's like, yeah, okay,
yeah,
cool, that I can do.
pretty much. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm still terrible at, I'm so used to being self-directed that I'm really terrible about asking for help.
I think we all are, me included.
I was just like, they didn't tell us how to set up the color palette. And one of the students is just like, you were supposed to tell us how to set up the palette. And I was just like, it didn't even occur to me to ask for this handout that was missing. I was just watching the video, like trying to match what Kevin was doing in the video. I'm just like, yeah, I'll figure it out. So that's actually something that I need to get better about is just being like, oh, there are people I can ask for advice. I should ask.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I
because
think,
everyone's so helpful, but it just doesn't even occur to me.
and that's what I keep telling people, that one of the great things about the program is that it's quite easy to help another student out because it's very like the difficulty isn't going up too quickly. Like there are some jumps, but it's, or at least in my experience so far.
Mm,
And so when we have these live sessions, someone's struggling with something, they can come in and be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that assignment. Yeah, it was tough. Here, let me show you what I learned." And I feel like we all have slightly different ways of doing things, but it's within the
yeah.
main parameters. So there's still room for you to have a little creative liberty. Like I remember, um, I would go back and fix my drawings, and Kevin's like, when he was in the studio, he's like, "Do it right the first time, so that you don't have to go back and waste time fixing it." I was like, "I know, but like that makes sense, but I still find myself making these mistakes, and it's something that I try and be aware of." But when I had this idea of like, oh, I'm kind of like cheating and working outside the parameters, but it's fine because really all we should be caring about is the end result, and the end results are looking good.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good time. Can we look at some of the pictures that you have back on the wall? And can you walk us through them? Because
Okay.
one of them is a student, or is a formal evolve
Yeah.
assignment. And so if you're listening, basically how it works is that each
Yeah.
the students do a sort of like a copy the example from the program,
Yeah.
and then their next assignment it's like, okay, set up your own still life, so that students are developing their own drawing skills, and so it kind of flip flops back and forth, and
Yeah.
students are developing their
So I have the reference photos. Do you want me to just hold up the reference photo
sure,
first?
sure, yeah.
Okay. So this is the reference photo. You can see the lovely glare from my screen, but this is at the end of block 3, which is when you start using color in oil paints. So that's the reference. Um, and this is the painting that I did.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Um, that was that was at some point this week. I think that was the middle of this week. Um, but yeah, I think everything else I've done this week has been like student still life so far. So this one was the beginning of the week.
Wow, how's that? Is it an elk or a deer?
I think it's
Caribou?
a stag, and it's really like shiny and glittery, and has like this ombre effect for two colors. Let me grab that. So here's the real
Wow.
thing, and there's the
Yeah, see,
picture.
I would not be doing that. I would definitely be choosing something easier, but it's good
Most
that you can.
people do. I like to push myself a little bit, like try to
Yeah,
still pick shapes that I can see, but I know that when I'm out in the wild on my own, I'm not going to pick less complicated projects
true.
because that's not how my brain
True,
works.
true. Yep.
So I like to try to pick challenging pieces while I have somebody over my shoulder to be like, well, you probably should have picked something simpler, but since you did that anyway, like, here's some areas where it could have been better or some things to keep in mind for next time.
And so right now you're in the third block, so you're not yet complete the foundation of Evolve.
No,
Um,
no, I haven't gotten to what they call direct painting, which is really where you start to produce the really impressive stuff. So by the program standards, I'm not even on like the really impressive stuff yet.
yeah, you're still
That's yet to
learning
come.
and actually so to explain, block one is charcoal drawing where you learn about values and how light works. Block two is basically the same thing, you just switch to paint.
Yeah.
Then block three, you introduce color, and so it's gradually introducing. And then
Yep.
block four is where it's just like, oh my God, you made that? And it's like, yep.
Yeah.
So,
Block four is where they start holding us to professional standards and we produce professional quality work. So I'm not there yet. I will be eminently, but
yeah,
I'm not
but
there
you
yet.
basically went from, you can't draw, and
Pretty much,
now
yeah.
six full months are behind you, and you're going into your seventh month, and you're painting these works, which
Yeah.
are beautiful, and I think I read online, I see some critics of the program like, well, why would you want to paint realism? And it kind of bugs me a little bit because like, well, it's not the point. Like the point is if you wanted to do realism, you could, but if you
Yeah.
wanted to do something weird and have control of the tools to make it however you want, you could do that. You could like mess with the color because you understand how color is applied and how it mixes and how it works together and you understand value. And so if you want to push something, you have that sort of like foundation, but it's not 12 different things. It's like just one foundation. And then you can do whatever you
Yes.
want with it. Then it's yours. You own it.
Yeah, I feel like you can always, I think, adjust for style later.
Yeah,
Um,
1,000%. Like that's the whole job that professionals do is the art director or the project comes and it's like here's the new style that you're working in
right.
and
I mean, it
because
just even changes for the project, right? Like this project is going to be done in this style, and you don't have to do that style all the time. But
yeah and because you're a
um,
pro and you know how to make art and you can just adapt it and it takes a little while to learn a new style but there's no limits really to what you can do.
right, like Picasso, years ago, they had an exhibit of his at the MoMA, and and I showed some of his student work. It was all, it was all realism, like the French Academy realistic style, and then obviously, like right, his most popular works are not for realism, but it was the stage that he went through, learning how to see, learning how to master his tools, and then he was just like, no, I'm done with that. I'm not in school anymore. I don't want to paint like that. It's not interesting to me anymore. Which you can do after you have the skills.
Yeah, I think that's the big part of it.
Yeah.
So what is your strategy for getting your work done? This is like the big question that I've been asking people because I feel like the curriculum and the skills transfer, that's all for sure. But where I see people
Yeah.
struggling is their strategies for getting getting the time in. But for you, what is your strategy?
Um, I I usually work in like the same block of time in the morning. So right now we have breakfast club, but before that, usually I would start working on my homework at like 6 in the morning. And I would spend maybe about 2 hours on it because, right, block one, the assignments are very segmented, and then I would just turn it in, and then I would go study something else for the day. And then as we got into painting or the longer assignments, I realized that studying something else is probably unnecessary right now. So I kind of dropped that and I went like all in on Evolve. So now usually what happens is I still wake up, I'll have tea, I'll check my messages, but usually by 7, if not earlier, I've already started working for the day, and I'll check in with the homework club or the breakfast club with whoever happens to pop in that day, and I'll work probably until about 10 when I'll have breakfast,
Okay,
and then
so a
I'll
chunk
just
of 3 hours there.
at least, yeah,
That
and
like you've done your pre-production, but you're like hitting it and working at 7. So it's not like because sometimes I feel like we say, "Oh, I started work at 7," but it's like, no, you didn't. You were on Facebook till 7:45, and you didn't really start
no, no,
anything
no,
until
actually working at 7.
yeah. Okay.
Uh, so like mixing paint or drawing or transferring images to Canvas at 7. And then usually by 10, I'll take a break. Sometimes we have morning errands and appointments. But then by the afternoon, usually like around 1 or so, I'll get back to work and I'll work depending on how long the project takes from like 1 until 6. So that's, I guess, eight
So
hours.
yeah, it's basically a full-time
Yeah.
full-time study.
Yes, but the end result is that I'll probably get through year one in about 7 months.
Yeah, which is awesome. We thought that that would be possible, but we weren't sure. And so if someone was even, um, if someone really wanted to go crazy, they could probably do it in
I'd
even.
say 6 probably,
Yeah,
depending on their personal schedule. If they get homework checked twice a day, and if they build up to like how much time they can spend sitting in the chair doing the work. Because with block three, the paintings are taking longer, and so this past week, I've kind of built up the stamina to be able to work regularly, focused for like 8 to 10 hours, and not feel like exhausted the next day.
yeah. I remember you saying that you would have these long sessions where you pushed it too far, and it was sort of like you were stealing energy from the future, and you had to
Yeah,
pay that energy back by
yeah, by
doing
being
less
less
work.
productive the next day.
Yeah.
No, but I feel like this week I've definitely just built up kind of the stamina and the sense to know, like, oh, okay, I'm getting tired and frustrated. Now I'm going to go take a break for half an hour and do something else and come back to it to be able to work for like 10 or 12-hour days. I don't think I'll ever be able to do Kevin's like 16-hour days when he was learning, and that's because my family would mutiny. but
Yeah.
but 10 to 12 is definitely within reach, particularly if I get up early and get like um, a good chunk in before breakfast.
And I think that's also like it's so realistic as well because I often, a lot of people email through Pencil Kings or now through Evolve and they're like, well, I want to be a pro. And if you're going to be a pro,
You
you're
need
going to
pro
have
habits.
you're going to have to put in time as a pro, like no job is going to pay you a full-time wage to work half time or less. And art is no different. I don't know why people think it's different, but you have to put in the work. And so there's this weird. This is the thing that we need to smash. Like, it's not starving artists. It's the problem. It's like you need to do the work. It's like, hey, I'm an artist. I only work 1 hour a day, and I'm starving. It's like, well, duh. You're only working 1 hour a day. You're gonna starve no matter what you do. But if you start putting in 8 to 10 hours, like you would at a normal job, who knows how far you can take it.
I think, yeah, I think part of the issue, right, is there is this like such a cloud of just like romanticism around art, and I feel like there's definitely a time for that romanticism, and that time might be when you're thinking about, like, when you're just like hashing out a concept for an idea, like, right, then you kind of want to be like inspired, kind of doing crazy things, and then maybe when you're selling the idea, right, because then you kind of like want to sell the romance of the piece or the emotional feel of the piece, not like I did 60 hours of work. Like, okay, your end consumer probably doesn't really care about that, but in between, there's work you have to put in. And the great thing about doing work is you don't have to be inspired to do it. You just got to sit down to do it.
That's true. Yeah, and there's also varying degrees of work, that the tolerability, and so, which is going to lead into my next question. But sitting in your own home, in your own
Yeah.
environment, which you have complete control over, and you can make it as cozy as you want. That sounds pretty great compared to some of the terrible, like, uh, my worst job ever was shoveling rotten potatoes out of a semi truck, and the smell that was there in the
Oh,
summertime with the heat and everything.
oh,
And so, and we all have these things, and I was younger, but we all have these things that we can compare to. And you think of the life of an artist that if you can spend 8 to 10 hours mostly in control of all of the randomness in your life, like things will still happen, but those would still happen whether you're shoveling rotten potatoes or you're painting. That's pretty good. And I often have to remind myself of just how great things are, that, like, I get to do this, to work with students, be a student, be in the program, because I'm, just like you, I'm working towards something more with it.
yeah, and I've gotten to this point. I was laughing about it yesterday. I just feel like at this point, like the answer to like 90% of my problems is painting. Like,
Explain.
uh, so so like yesterday, I was just like frustrated, because I just had like, a personal interaction that I just like I couldn't control and I couldn't fix. Like, it was one of those things where like the only way to fix it was just like to give you go to your separate corners and you cool down. But I'm like, but I want to fix it now, but I can't fix it. And I was so frustrated. So I just went to paint. I was like, all right, I'll paint. I have control over the painting. So frustrated, painting, or like, excited about the program, paint. Frustrated about the program and want to be in block 4 already, paint. Want to be done with the program and moving on to personal projects, paint faster, right? Paint more. Um, so it's just like, right, so many of like these other things. It's just like, all right, well, the solution is painting. Until the problem is like tired of painting and want to throw your paintbrush at things, stop painting.
Yeah, I've heard
Go
this a
take
few
a break.
times. That there is a limit where you're just like, no, no, I need to like go and take a walk or take some time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's rare, but it does happen.
um, while you're working for these long stretches, what's on in the background? Do you listen to music, or you have movies on? Are you in silence? Something else?
It depends. Um, all of the above. But it also depends on the stage. If it's a stage where I'm just kind of filling in large areas with paint and I don't need a lot of focus, it just needs time, then sometimes I'll put a show on Netflix and I'll have it playing over my headphones. And I mean, there's a monitor here, obviously, but I have one also right here. And then obviously my easel is here. And my palette goes here. So it's pretty easy to just like glance over at the
Oh, cool.
screen
Yeah.
as I'm getting more paint on my brush. Um, so sometimes I'll do that. Um, I also have music that I'll listen to on my headphones. Um, Sometimes I'll listen to podcasts, but especially towards the end, like when I'm like doing all those finicky little details, I find that music is the best one. And I start to get really picky about the songs that come up on my shuffle. I'm like, no.
Do tell.
Oh, did it just when I'm at that level, usually it's the end of the day and I'm trying to be really so then I'm just like trying to find songs that are like more upbeat and high energy. So
Okay.
I'll like if anything is slow or more atmospheric, I'm just like, no, I don't have that in me. Skip.
Okay, and lyrics, no lyrics. This is a big one for me that I almost always do no lyrics, but for you?
Oh, I do lyrics, because I'm not writing, so so it's something that that is easy for me to kind of tune out.
Hmm.
But also, I don't know. I feel like it kind of helps me focus because my brain, the parts of my brain that wants to be distracted from painting and find something easier, more instantly fun to do, something to focus on, so it leaves me alone so I can paint.
The next question I have is what inspires and motivates you? And inspiration is like a kind of a word that we don't like to use so much in the
Inspiration is a
program because
four-letter word.
it's like if you feel like, oh, I can't work unless I have inspiration. It's like, no, 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 that's not how work works. You just do work. You're not inspired to go to your job or to do the thing that you have to do. You just do it. But what's motivating for you? I think is maybe the better way.
I think I've been at this long enough that I like the way it feels. Like my hand and my brain work well together, and they're just kind of like some people hate going to the gym at first, but then after a while they start to get into it because they're like, oh yes, this is a good feeling, the feeling of having done something that puts you one step closer to your goal.
Yeah.
So even if I'm not having what I would call like a good painting day, or like the painting is difficult, then I'm still like, all right, well, I got one step closer to my goal because I've made myself do some work.
And was there a point there? Because I've been thinking about this a lot of momentum, of how it takes a while to, because you're standing still, right? With anything new, you've never done it before. You're not in motion, and then you do it a little bit, and it's hard to get into a routine. But eventually, you start to get into a routine, and now it's like it's the opposite. If you stop doing the routine, then you're kind of agitated, and
Oh,
you're like, oh,
I
I just
get
want to be
so
painting.
cranky.
But
Get
where was
so
that point? I feel like especially for people who are listening and that they haven't got into momentum yet. Was there a point where you realized like, oh, this is getting easier and easier to do the work?
I think for me, painting particularly was a struggle. I think until about halfway through block two, and I think I can. It should be in this box. I think I have like the exact painting where things shifted from. I
Oh,
don't feel like
yes.
I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. So like,
Yeah.
no, I got this.
And okay. And so while Kristen's looking for that, I'll explain what this feeling is like because I've had it a few times. She's further ahead than me, but it's like you're working, you're working, and you're working, and you're just like doing it, and then it's all of a sudden like this light bulb switches on, and it's like happens so instantly that you don't. It's almost like you don't realize that it's there. You don't trust it. You're like, wait a second, why is this so easy? It's like I'm using a totally different tool. It's still the brush in my hand, or it's still the pencil, and it's still the paper, but I'm using it at a whole other what's going on, and I think it's just the only way it's a jump. It's not a gradual, like it might be happening gradually, and it's just your brain hasn't caught up to what you're doing, but
Yeah.
it's literally a jump, and it's profound. So anyway,
So this is the painting,
okay.
and it's I'm sure you can see it, but it's just like a rose candle holder, and it's a black rose candle holder on a stack of white boxes. But this one was the one where I was just like, yeah, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I mean, Kevin had said it before then about some painting I did, and he was like, "No, it looks good. It's clear that you know exactly what you're doing." And I was just like,
Ah.
It's like, if you say so. Um, but I don't. I think this was this is the painting I think that he said that about. And I was like, all right, if you say so.
Yeah.
But I
That's
wasn't really
yeah.
convinced until I think maybe 3 or 4 paintings later. Um, but yeah, that was the first one where I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. And then I went on to do, more ridiculous still life setups like this one.
Again,
Uh,
yeah, these are still lifestyles that I will not be doing, you know. I
Atypical. Um, and that's fine. So there is that one. And then these are obviously, these are like the very end of block 2. And this one with a coyote skull on some boxes. And this is the last one that I did for block 2.
Very nice.
So yeah, sometime in there, it started to feel like less of a struggle and more like, oh, this is fun. I'm getting it. I'm doing it. And I guess being able to kind of get into a sort of flow state with it. And so now if I don't get a chance to actually paint before I have to get on with the rest of my day, I start to get really cranky.
Um,
It's like when you haven't had enough sleep and like you haven't had a chance to have your coffee, and it's an awful feeling.
so I was curious if we can tell the story of the rivalry that's in your house. If it's not a story that we want to talk about, that's fine. But I just think it's really interesting and it's a unique story. Is it cool to talk about that?
Yeah, I guess we can talk about that. So I live with another artist, and she's been at it longer than I have. Like she actually went to art school, and then realized she wasn't learning nearly as much as she would have liked, so she left. So, um, and she has been practicing for a long time, and I've always admired her use of color and just how she paints. And she's part of the reason I went back to art because I had given it up for a while because I was just kind of like, yeah. But um, but watching her do it, I was like, man, I wish I could do that. I was like, oh, I could, I guess. No one's stopping me except for me. Um, so yeah, so I was on block 3 and I was doing a painting. Not any of these even. One of the earlier paintings in block 3. I think it's like the first full color painting in block 3. And she looks at it and she says, I think you're a better painter in color than I am now. And that just couldn't stand. So it's like, I think I'm going to do the program.
I love it.
So, so yeah. So now she's gotten her first box, and she's going to defend her title of best painter in the house, which I'm sure that she will regain in no time. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm not.
I was just gonna say it's such a great place to be when you have someone that you're sharing the journey with and kind of pushing, or if someone's feeling down, you can share the knowledge with each
Yeah.
other and the insights, and that you're just both going to start speeding up. And even, you're now in block 3 and she's in block 1, but in helping her and in teaching her and getting her through some things, you're also strengthening your own
Yeah.
understanding. You're deepening that knowledge. So,
And
yeah,
she still has a
it's
better
great.
eye than I do because a couple weeks ago she's looking at one of my paintings and she was like, I think your shadows can be darker. And I was like, I'm kind of struggling with that a little bit, trying to figure out how much to darken the shadows before they lose color, and just become too gray or too black. All right, and then 2 days later, Kevin says the same thing. Like, I think your shadows could be a
Oh,
little
yeah,
darker.
okay.
And she
She's
was
got
like,
the eye.
yes, yes, she does. So, like I said, I'm sure she'll catch up to me in no time, and I look forward to that day. I was so excited when she said she was thinking about joining
Yeah,
the
I remember you
program.
talking about that. Yeah,
I
that
was
was a
like,
good day.
oh, you want to join the program? I'm like, okay, whew. I just no. just let her think about it. Give her space. Don't be cool. Be cool. I'm terrible at being cool. I was like, oh, it's got to be her decision. It's got to be her decision. So, yeah. But no, I'm really excited
uh,
because I just had such success with the program that I was just like excited to tell everybody about it.
I'm in the exact same boat, and I feel like I might be being too pushy with people, but it's like this is the answer. Like I was looking for this for, I think it was I realized that this was a problem about 5 or 6 years ago. Then I met Kevin 2 years ago. It took us a year to get the first boxes in anyone's hands. And now we're a year into it and we can start to see the student results, which, the program is really starting to speak for itself. And it's only going to get crazier. And it's like, if you want to do this, come, like, join in. And I think it's like, well, why join in now? Why not wait? We have a ridiculous amount of access to Kevin, like the master, right? And I don't know how long that will last. The more you'll still get the results and everything, but you just won't have as much access. So if you needed a reason to jump now, I think that's it.
Yeah, the access to you and Kevin is just like something I didn't expect. Like I think, right, I've been Pencil King since March, and I think before Evolve, I got like a couple of form emails from you, and I caught you a couple times in Discord, and I've seen you like every day for like the past two or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And Kevin a couple times, less because he was busy, I think, with the holidays and the conference. But Kevin pops in all the time, and that's always great because I just, love hearing Kevin's stories and his experience and his advice. Like he's such a character, right? And I think he has such warmth that really doesn't come through, I think, in a lot of the videos because they're so, he's trying to convey so much information in such a short period of time. But yeah, just like being able to have face-to-face time with Kevin in the homework room or in the Q&As, you can definitely see the warmth and that, he's invested in the success of all the students. And I think that's really nice, especially if you're coming to art, as an adult or later in your life, because chances are you probably didn't get a lot of support from the people around you, and you're like, I want to be an artist, and they're just like, yeah, tell me another one. That one was good. But so it's nice to have that support and feel like, oh, somebody cares if I make it or not.
Yeah. Oh, and I think from like seeing the student submissions, like because every day there's lots of students submitting things in, and it's like behind the scenes because we're talking in chat and trying to make the program better all the time. It's like, oh my God, look at this, like look at this, and it just like it's accelerating too, like because the further we get into the program as students, the more exciting it is. Like the paintings are just more exciting. And it's like, block one with charcoal, you start filling a gray box. And it's like, you can't get excited about a gray box. But then by the end, you can pretty much take it as far as you want. And some people do. and it's just like, oh my gosh, you made that.
Right? Who knew you could do that with 4 values and 2 pencils?
Exactly. So what would you tell someone who's new to the program to, again, I'm going to use the word, to inspire them or advice just to really like prepare them for the journey ahead and set them on a good path?
Commit to the program, I think, and like to your success. Right in the first video, Kevin asked for like an hour a day, and I'd say just make it easy on yourself. Like set up, like this is permanently set up because if I had to take it down and take it out to start working, I would never work. So I just removed that hurdle. So the space is always ready for me to work. My computer is nearby, so I can always watch the videos. And if you can, like, just dedicate like the same block of time every day and defend it. Like give yourself the best chance to actually get your work done. And I think, like, to the best of your ability, just trust the program and follow the instructions. Because, I mean, it's one of the things you're paying for, right? Is the structure of the program and Kevin's expertise. So to not follow the instructions or listen to the feedback is like, I'm going to take this thing that I paid for and I'm going to throw it out the window with both hands.
But it happens. I mean,
It does.
It does happen, and so I think that's why it's such great advice. And there's so many weird things around art that I feel like I haven't found the connections yet to other areas to draw correlations where people are like, oh, it's like bicycle riding and blah, blah. It's like, I don't know what it is, but when it comes to art, there's so many weird thoughts and ideas that we have as a society that's kind of, like you said before, hey, mom and dad, I want to be an artist. And I always feel like as the parents, like, no, anything but an artist. Don't tell me anything. Just, And so as a society, we have a lot of these weird ideas, and we haven't figured out frameworks to empower people, And anyway, last question. Where can we find more of your work to sort of follow you online and follow your journey and see what's new and exciting?
I'm so bad at just social media and putting myself out there, which I think would probably surprise anybody who's actually in the program, because I'm definitely one of the people who's just like always out there. But I have a website that's under construction. It's at kristenandrea.com, so that would be probably the first place to see updates aside from maybe the Evolve Facebook group. And if I set up any other accounts elsewhere, all that information will be on the website.
Perfect. And could you just spell that out for us so that if anyone wants to type it
in, it's so Kristen, right, Kristen, and then Andrea, AUNDREA.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And as usual, we'll have show notes here, so I'll have links to Kristen's site, and I think we're good. This has been, thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
We talk almost every day because we're in the Breakfast Club, which we keep mentioning this, and so to explain what the Breakfast Club is, it's a set time every day in the morning when I've committed, and I feel like you've committed too, that we're the rocks. We are.
I'm going to be up and working anyway. I mean,
well, exactly. So it was a set time that I knew that before my day got crazy. For me, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time was a time that I could, like you said, defend, do my work, and get through the program. And so we just call it Breakfast Club. So that's where we hang out, and it's great that even after all that time together, I'm still learning things and learning new strategies from speaking with you, just as I'm going to learn strategies from speaking with the other students. And I hope that you listening to this are also learning strategies. If you're in the Evolve program or not, these things are universal. Like what Kristen is talking about, finding your time. If you hit rewind and go back about 5 minutes, everything that she said is going to take you. If you've been struggling, it's going to take you very far. It's not rocket science, this stuff. It's work. So just put your excuses to bed and stop looking for shortcuts or the newest foundation or the newest tool or, oh my gosh, I downloaded this. Stop doing that. Just do the work. Stop watching videos and do it. And you see how far you can go in the next 30 days because you will amaze yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing like how much you can do when you stop like psyching yourself out and just sit down and get to work.
Demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.